So welcome to your last lecture in data preparation and workflow management. Today it's all about summarizing what we learned in a way, synthesizing, that learning journey you all went through, and also helping you prepare for the exam. Um, so um, there will be the opportunity after today's stream to ask questions, because I will not take the entire 1.5 hours. So if you have stuff you want to talk about with me and your team, you can coordinate with each other and then ask these questions at the end of the stream, and we can share screens. Right. As another announcement, I had surveyed you on whether you want to have the lecture tomorrow on campus or not. 5 students want to have it on campus, and 45 don't. It's going to be fully online, and maybe I will be on campus and I can meet those people that do show up for coffee later that day, but I'm not going to organize a physical lecture on campus if you don't want to come, which is fine. All right, so let's summarize the course. Let's see where we stand. I hope you can all turn on your cameras. It makes it a little more lively. And actually, I already regret not seeing your faces, after the end of this stream, or maybe online data collection and management tomorrow, because it's been a good journey, and I kind of, like teaching your group a lot. So if you haven't done so, please explore the exam page, and I'll put the link to it in the chat, so you can just click on it, because we got example questions right there. And like I mentioned before, my courses don't score so well in managing expectations. So I think that because all of my material is out there on the internet anyways, I think I should be managing expectations. So something is missing. So if there's anything that can help you get prepared for the exam better, let me know how I can do that. And I'm happy to kind of see what I can do. All right, so I'll summarize this course, and I'll give you a few pointers on what I think are cool things to do after you followed this course, during your studies and after your studies. Then I'll quickly go over the course evaluation, and we'll go to the exam, through the exam preparation together. And then I'll take remaining questions, and we can talk about your team. So how is data preparation and workflow management positioned in your curriculum? Well, it zooms in on 2 aspects of the research workflow: data preparation. So you learn to use dplyr or data table to read in data and prepare it in a way that you can analyze that data. One of the operations that you've been familiarized with is aggregation, for example, right? So you have, let's say, data at the listing date level, and you aggregate it to the listing level. Or you have data at the at the city listing level, and you aggregate it up to the city level. They're like very, it's one of the most commonly used data operations. So filtering, or, I don't know, transforming the data, right? So that's all data preparation stuff. And you've learned a lot, I hope, about deployment, right? So we're not so much concerned about just, I don't know, having some output in R that we're happy with, but we want to take it a step further, right? We want to produce a nice looking result table. We want to produce a website. We want to produce a markdown document that makes it look nice. We want to write an app that does certain things. I'm even not sure whether this one team that I once talked to is actually doing the app, but that's kind of where you're heading here, right? So these are new things for you, where I felt there was a need to dig in just a little bit deeper. But then data prep is so much more than just that, right? It's also the linking pin between all the other parts of the research process, right? So how do you go from collecting data to prepping it, right? You need automation to tie these things together. How do you go from data prep to analysis? Again, automation is the key. How do you coordinate this process? This is about the Scrum framework and managing your code-based projects on GitHub. So in a way, I hoped that, this course situated at the very beginning of your program will, get you ready to use dPrep as kind of the Swiss Army knife to tie things together and to work together. It's a proven concept among some researchers, but even more among the leading tech firms in this world. So automation and especially GitHub. So there should be some value in it. And then what did we do specifically, right? So you learn about a new way of working that involves coding, right? don't copy paste code. Well, copy paste code, but when you copy paste it and you're just changing like, one line at a time, and you have like 10 code chunks that look exactly the same except this one thing, you should have used looping, right? So I didn't prep it like this, but hey, there is a new landing page with Topic Science Hub. So you can ask your question right here. So if you do coding, what is it? Principles for good coding, for example, is one of those things, right? Define things once and only once. Let computers repeat and execute tasks, right? If you copy paste code more than 3 times, write a function instead, loop it instead, right? So these are all principles of good coding that I hope that could make you, discover during this course, at least like a lot of times when I met you for team assignments. Collaboration is another key aspect of working together. And let me, give you another glimpse of one of my project boards on a project where I'm working at. So I jointly co-authored this with Max Bacciali, who is doing the conjoint course in our program, right? And this is how our board looks. Well, I did this, right? But I still got to work on a couple of things, and Max also has his homework. Well, we do use this as well. So it's a very productive way of working together. And I hope I could get you kind of, excited about it at least. And then there's automation, right? All that makefile, where I probably have to spend a lot of time consulting you guys during today's Q&A after this, right? Yeah, and you applied it to the research workflow. And that's your team project, right? Which is due this Sunday, I think. So there are 4 big chapters of like lessons learned that I want to go through, right? First one is versioning and project management with GitHub. And I'll give you a couple of pointers, but I'm also excited to hear what you think, what you've learned. So Scrum, organizing your work in small sprints, and the project board where everything gets together is like a pretty cool way to collaborate with one another. Especially when you work on many things and you pre-schedule time. Let's say now I have like 2 hours to work on this project. You want to minimize setup costs. You don't want to like think, oh, what did I discuss last time? Well, what I do all the time is just like open the project board, and that's where I get started. It's my cockpit, right? I get started looking at the stuff that's there and the priorities that I want to assign to it. And then after my block of hours where I wanted to work on this project is over, after 2 hours, I'll just close the board and go to my next project. So that way I can push multiple projects at the same time. Something that I learned is that writing issues is pretty hard because you don't have time, because you don't think it's like valuable maybe. So if you're searching the site for good issues, this is another really good article on explaining you how to write better issues. And probably the first issues you've written aren't that good yet, but I hope that there's some improvement in it. It does seem to put a lot of structure on your work, right? So probably you think you had a management system, and now I asked you, kind of force you through my grading criteria to work with this system a bit. I'm actually curious to hear, how did it work out? Did you kind of get started with it and got sidetracked and went to your old way of doing things, or did you like consistently apply it? So I'm curious actually to hear. So if anybody wants to unmute and explain a bit about the experience, that'll be cool. It's also a way for me to get feedback, right? Other than you filling in yet another survey about how you like the course. Annabelle.
Yeah, I think first it was a bit hard to create the issues and get everyone on the same page on putting everything in it, and what should you put in the board, like only the 2.1 from your own website, like the sections, or really the small tasks.
Yeah,
I think it worked in the end, just to see what we still needed to do. And
put your repository URL in the chat if you don't mind. Then I want to take a look at your board.
The board.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. A dPrep board right here.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Sometimes I also forget.
I think it's this one.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Let's take it out. There you go. Exactly.
I have the query on my name still.
No, but that's perfect, right? So you're using it already in a good way, right? So that's your to-do list, and you got multiple stuff right here. And Annabelle has a query where she can just look at her own stuff, which is great, right? Something that you could do is create actually views where this is filtered. So on my board, I have multiple views for each team member, right? So example, if you look at the board of Tilburg Science Hub, for example, I think it should be, it's not here, it's here. Let me see. Where is it? Projects. Oh, it's not here. I think the project is here. Still get confused with all these different project boards, but like we have created prefixed views. Like this is our overall project list. This is more Kanban style. This is for the core team. This is for research assistants and for different members of our team, right? So you can also organize it that way. But yeah, cool, Annabelle. This looks good. I'm happy to hear that it somewhat worked for you. Versioning can be quite powerful. So explain to me about how this versioning went for you. So if you want to put your repository URL in the chat, if there's another team, I'll take a look at your versioning history and comment upon it. If not, I'll keep on going with Annabelle's team and Luke's team, I guess. But put your thing in the chat and maybe I give you some more feedback that you could still incorporate before you hand in the project. I'm waiting for, thank you, Francisco, exactly. So let's take a look, and thanks Jan for sending it. Oh, that's not the thing. This is the one. Oh, cool. This looks welcoming. That's cool. I like it. This is a bit too long. Make this a little shorter. You know, you don't need to talk about my name or whatever. It doesn't matter who taught this course. Just make it about yourself in this project. Good. So let's take a look at the versioning history. So 89 commits. So I don't think you used it like that much. And now I don't know like how much Annabelle used it, or Luke, but somewhat feels. Oh. Let me see whether I find your project. There you go. Which one is it? Oh, you can still change your name, I think. Is it this one?
Pricing.
Yeah. No, it's the Airbnb pricing.
Pricing.
Okay, so kill the other ones if they're not relevant anymore. Add this about page. You forgot to add this. Yeah, 200 commits, right? So, you know, and we can look at the commit graphs. I think if you go on insights, you can actually see how over time your contribution has been, right? So here, for example, I already see they worked with pull requests, which is something you could do. So let me go to this insights page right here. You haven't worked with pull requests, so maybe you want to add one. You know, this is a good way of working together and trying these things out. You can look at, well, you have kind of an equal distribution here, somewhat equal, I would say. Over here, it's quite skewed, right? So who is it? Luke did a lot, and then probably Annabelle or, you know, Bauke. So, you know, it's all the kind of things that you can look at to understand how you collaborated and use these things together. Okay, so let's look at the commit messages here. So, oh, by the way, what this allows us also to do is look how the work developed over time, right? So you see, yeah, somewhat, yeah, you all guys, you know, contributing stuff. So that's pretty cool. So like looking at this would like lead me to conclude that probably you worked on this together, at least with 2 or 3 members all the time, right? So that's how I use to look at this. So versioning can be powerful, but did anybody ever have a merging issue, like problems that you ran into, and what were these issues? Jan, you want to? Did you ever have a problem merging stuff or collaborating, or
yeah?
Well, yeah. Okay.
One time we, or at least I tried to merge something, and I had to enter a message, and after I did that, it put somehow within the R file a few codes.
Yes.
And I had no idea what they meant.
Yeah. So normally Git can merge 2 files if 2 people worked on it together at the same time. I mean, not together, but independently, and it can merge these things if you edited different sections of the file. But the moment you're writing code in the same sections of the same code file, R is like, nah, I don't know which code to take now. And then it is editing these header and weird characters in there because it wants you to decide what you want to keep.
Yeah.
Understand? And that's what you do. And typically you get like an error which says like, merging messages, please correct it manually. And then you have to commit again to fix it. And that is the moment where you have to jump into that code and look at what you want to keep, like use your own expertise to decide what is relevant and what not. That doesn't happen all the time, but it happens at times. But it's good because it makes these merging issues more explicit. So if you want to compare it to Dropbox, probably you could have worked together on that same file, but suddenly you create this conflicted version and then you're not sure which version you're entering, right? So Git makes these issues very, very explicit and forces you to correct this. Rob, also, yeah, you almost delete code. It happens to me all the time. But the beauty is if your repository is in sync, you can never delete your code because it's always there, right? Yeah, exactly. And when you use branches, things get like more difficult. So a website that I really like is called Oh Shit Git, which teaches you like all of these commands that you need to know when you kind of messed it up. So, you know, you want to take it, and we use a few of those things also on Tilburg Science Hub, but Oh Shit Git is maybe also cool. Like it's a cool dynamic cheat sheet, I would say. So let's go back to my slide deck. So versioning can be powerful, use it all the time. So for example, the latest version of the Tilburg Science Hub website, I use 2 branches in my Git repository. And probably if you enter the site right now, you see this page or you see the old page, and I'm A/B testing at this moment. So it's like 2 branches of the same project, and you get randomly served one of those pages, which allows me to evaluate whether my new search bar actually boosts search, because I think we have so many categories and it's cumbersome to browse through the site. So I want to try whether the search is a better tool, right? You can iterate faster on branches, whether it's a website project or an empirical research project. You can roll back whenever you want, delete stuff that isn't necessary. All right, let's take a look at this repository. And I would say, oh yeah, only your final output is there, so that's okay. Nothing unnecessary seems to be here, but the report probably doesn't belong to here. But it overall looks like a very clean repository to me, with only the necessary things. Oh, by the way, Jan and Francisco, is it just really one file that you have here, or is it better to split it up in multiple parts? Yeah. Looks okay. Maybe you want to split it up in 2 files, have the analysis and the plotting. I would recommend you do that, because otherwise, you know, the make file there doesn't really make so much sense. Okay. Good. Delete stuff. Oh no, and can't put, yeah, whatever. You solve these conflicts. And who used R? Who used Git from within R? Or did you all use Git on the command line? Yeah, okay. Rob on the command line, I see. But you know how to use R and Git together, right? Or should I explain it again? Rob, you're muted. Or you're talking to somebody else. That's possible too, but maybe you're talking to somebody else. That's fine. So use Git with R. I think there's probably a zillion tutorial videos that you could just kind of take a look at. So there you go. Good. And you've learned to collaborate on open source projects. And the cool thing is, like, you don't even have to know coding to contribute to open source projects, right? So for example, in Tilburg Science Hub or my open education classes, what you could just do is you could just you know, edit the text. It is code after all, but it's not programming, right? So if you find a glitch in I don't know, in anything on Tilburg Science Hub, for example, the only thing that you would have to do is click on the, oh, it's not here. Maybe it's on one of the building blocks. Let me see. The only thing you would have to do is click on the edit this page button, and you're being redirected to the site where you can edit it. And yes, it's code, but it's easy code, right? You can just correct a typo, for example. So, and that we do with pull requests. I know Jan and Francisco, they haven't worked with pull requests, but Luke and Annabelle have. So because you're not the owner of open source projects, you will have to learn how to use pull requests to contribute to open source projects. All right. And because you learned how to use Git, there's also less risk of destroying your work, which would be fatal. Oh, and you've learned the tools used in business, which is also something I really advocate, right? It's a standard thing. It's actually, it doesn't matter whether you use GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. These are all like the same implementations of Git, but they just have a different wrapper around it, a different platform that manages these things. But the basic of Git, which you've learned in this class, Git add, Git pull, Git status, Git push, Git pull, that is all the same. Mike, yes, you can use R, you can use Git from the terminal in R as well. But if you're, more of a graphical user interface person, you could just follow, I think, this thing which I just put in the chat, and you have a graphical user interface to using Git with committing and adding and that stuff. So it helps sometimes to do that. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to become used to it. You need to force yourself a bit into thinking this framework, but at least you're getting course credit for it here. But I think you've learned something that is more valuable than just this course. All right, let's talk about lessons learned for data exploration. Well, R Markdown, that's pretty cool because you can mix coding with reporting. But you should also know about the limits of using R Markdown. If you're running an entire data preparation pipeline in R Markdown, that's super inefficient. It's like, yeah, you don't need it, right? The R code as such is much more lightweight, it runs faster. So especially when you work on large scale data projects, it really doesn't make sense generating a report PDF for your data prep. But it makes sense when you explore charts and when you want to report beautiful tables with an analysis. I use it all the time. It's praised. I mean, I would praise R Markdown really for its ability to quickly produce clean documents that you can share as HTML websites, as PDF documents, as presentations. By the way, this slide deck is also an R Markdown presentation. Yeah, a complication maybe is like, okay, so I got this R Markdown code, but how do I run it with Make? And many teams actually got into this. So maybe, if you still have issues knitting your R Markdown documents with Make, then we can chat about this. And probably there's also some code snippet somewhere on the web that helps you do it. But if you have problems implementing it, talk to me and I'm happy to show it. R Markdown is also really good to do data quality checks. I mean, kind of, because you need to produce plots when you want to check your data. So, I mean, that kind of is natural with R Markdown. You can get back to your data supply if needed, or you can check whether the second delivery batch of the data that you got is actually better. And what you should know is when it is really useful to use R Markdown versus maybe R code files to do stuff. And I gave a couple of examples, and a few of those are on the slides as you see. And then we moved into data preparation, right? This was just looking at a data set. Now we're actually going to prepare the data. And on the exam, there will be a question where you're going to do both, right? Like when you have an R Markdown document, and I'll give you a data set which is too large to plot because you have to plot like 10,000 of data points, maybe you first want to use your data prep skills to aggregate the data to a level that makes sense, right? So think of it, right? I'll give you a data set on playlists and the number of followers, and what else? The number of listeners of a playlist, right? And I want you to create a plot that visualizes the relationship between number of listeners and number of followers. But then there are 1.2 million playlists in my data set. So your plot is going to consist out of 1.2 million playlists. Trust me, those of you who have a laptop which is like 4 centimeters thick, it will take the laptop 2 hours to produce this plot because it's actually plotting one one point after the other in the scatter plot. So how do you circumvent that? You aggregate the data. That's actually what I require you to do. You get stuck even on a fast laptop plotting 1.2 million data points. But if you aggregate it, it's maybe just 100 points, right? So, for example, you can bucket playlist followers in 10 buckets, and then just plot those in a bar chart or something like that. I don't know. There are a couple of ways and pointers that I will give you on the exam, but trust me, know your skills in dplyr so that you can aggregate the data, filter the data, because the data set you're getting is going to be too big to just like analyze in the old way. And Rob, you can use anything that you want. You can use any cheat sheet that you want. But communication with other students is not allowed on this exam, right? Sure, yeah, I see you not. That's it. But I mean, the whole point of coding is that yes, of course, Isabel. Yes, you can use the internet. That's the whole point. But like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense otherwise. But data prep, what do you learn? Like, why do we actually have to clean up data? I made like a video on YouTube about it. So have that down, right? Understand why you need to clean data. You can rewatch it if you like. Data preparation code can be complex, so it makes sense splitting it up into smaller chunks. And your project may be still small, and sometimes you don't see the need of splitting it up. But trust me, the moment you work with more people on more complex projects, you need to break down these files. And because data prep code is complex, use the cheat sheets. One of the key learnings of this module of data prep was also to always have input, transformation, and output building blocks in your script. If you don't load any data at the beginning of your script, I will not be able to run it because I don't have the data, right? So, and if your input is downloading the data, well, then put it there, right? Always have ITO building blocks in your code. And sometimes, the output file may just be a text file that you create because you want make to notice it has updated or it has run. That's fine. But generally speaking, this rule always applies for make in particular. And you've learned what the components are of a research project. We talked about directory structures, right? Like you've got source code, generated files, and raw data. These are the large categories. What types of generated data do we have? We have temporary files. We have the output files. We have auditing files. And these are typically one, and maybe sometimes you have input files, external input files that you include, right? What's the difference between output files and auditing files? Output files are the final product. So for a data prep pipeline stage, it's the final data set or the final data sets and maybe the documentation of these data sets. What are auditing plots or text documents that go into the gen audit folders, like maybe an R markdown showing how the data looks, maybe some plots, maybe, some data cleaning stuff that you want to put there, automatically generated by your code, but it's not central, right? You only want to have your final product of the pipeline stage in your output folder on, generated files. This allows you to also help to identify what's missing, right? So many times I have a pipeline and I have output files and a temp folder. And I'm like, the audit file is missing. And then I'm like, yeah, I didn't really audit my stuff. And then I audit it, right? So it's a framework to think about data where lots of experience has been put in. So use that framework, but also don't be too dogmatic about it, right? So if you have a little pipeline and there is no paper stage because all you want is just a regression output table, then don't have a paper stage. Just produce that at the end of the analysis stage and you're done, right? So use this as a way of thinking about your research project. Something makes sense to have always, some other things are moldable, right? You can adapt these things. And then we talked about pipeline building and automation. And it gives you a lot of clarity of where to store stuff. And what the components are of a research project. And yeah, by the way, this is my little reminder of what I wanted to talk about, but I've just done this. Make is really cool because it allows you to run the work others have done on your computer. My work, your work, somebody else's work, it really doesn't matter. For those people that are extremely enthusiastic about dPrep, I have significantly revised the Docker workflow. And I quickly want to give you a preview and I'll put it in the chat, okay, to show you what this is. And in particular, I added a new repository with all of the code and maybe a too long I didn't read installation, which is like super, super cool. All right, let me walk you through this. This is not exam relevant, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so you know the source code stuff, right? You got your source code here. What I have here is an R script with packages that need to be installed. What I have is a text file with Python packages that need to be installed. By the way, let me be clear. Let me just add it here. Oh, I'm not sure if I can, no, maybe not. And I have an R script, a Py script, which generates some random numbers, not so relevant. And I have an R script that does an output, okay? This is like a normal thing. And instead of a make file, I have like a little script, it's called run, which runs the Python script and then runs the R script. That's it, right? It's super simple workflow, all right? Now, the thing with Docker is that you can like build a container with an isolated environment that has everything on board to run it. So it's not only it has a makefile and your data and maybe some code, but it also has an operating system, and it also has the Python version that you want. It has the R version that you want, and it has all the packages installed that you want. So it's actually like a more extreme version of what you were required to do in your project, right? You have a make pipeline, and that's great. I just learned about this, you know, these weeks, right? So that's why it's not part. Maybe I will make this part of the course next time. But now you wrap it even up higher, and you can run it everywhere. And the magic happens in a little file. It's not called makefile, it's called a Docker file. So over here, we're defining that we're actually using a Linux machine, like Linux, an operating system, which is free to use. We're explicitly telling to install Python 3.9 and R. Then there's some blah, 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 blah. Then we copy our repository to this machine. We're installing our packages, and then we run this run script. Okay, and then how this works is actually really, really simple. And these are the steps right here, right? So let me just do it. So I git clone this repository. Oh, sorry, that wasn't it. Git clone, and I call this demo dPrep. I go into this thing. It's this general pipeline that you know with source, right? Now we're building the Docker image, which means like the computer will run all the installation of an entire operating system, which runs virtually on your computer. I'll just put it in. Now you get a little output. It takes like 30 seconds to build. You already see Ubuntu has already been downloaded. Now it's installing the packages in this isolated container. Okay, this is just one app, right? But you can do this with like tremendous amount of workflows, and it will always run. If it runs on your computer, it will also run on another computer. Okay, now I'm done. And now I just need to start it up. And, you know, there's a little command that you can, oops, sorry. Well, now you can like all hack into my computer. So I'm changing my password. How to run it is just with one command. And the workflow has been built, and the generated files are here. My data files are here. It's all there. And it's just a couple of 4 commands, but you cannot underestimate how powerful this is. So if you know Docker, when you're applying for a job, this is a skill you put on your CV, because it's like GitHub 2.0. Like if you know that stuff and you can use that stuff, people will love it. And I really suggest you guys take a look at it if you're enthusiastic in general about this course content. Okay. Pipeline automation in general also helps you discover mistakes in your code. So that's pretty cool, right? So you thought probably you had an awesome looking file and it all worked, and then you started automating, and Make just started to throw error after error. I've seen it happening so many times during the coaching sessions. So it forces us to be precise, and it shows us the mistakes that we have made. So it's good. Like packages that you thought were loaded but are not loaded, or the order in which you execute your stuff. And ultimately, it should help you save time. It certainly does so for me, but not at the beginning when you learn, but this is with everything that you learn, right? So think of this as the Swiss Army knife, which we've just completed, because there are like 4 big modules here. And, you know, keep on using that knife, otherwise it's going to rust, and it's not going to be helpful. So always come back to this, because also for the remainder of your master program, you're going to be learners. You're not going to be only users of whatever you've learned, right? So you got to practice and practice and practice. Be in touch with me if you need more help or have feedback. So yeah, you can actually make this your productive, edge. And yeah, so that's my recommendation probably to all of you guys. Take time to let it sink in and just trust my intuition, my experience, that this will be helpful for you guys. Put it on your CV. By the way, if you don't have a data scientist looking CV, make one, because it only takes you like 15 minutes to launch, and you have a website which looks like, yeah, I don't know, this is my site. You could just copy it. You don't need that elaborate profile, right? But like data science, GitHub. Actually, let's look at Roy's page, because he has a good one. Roy Class Boss. He worked at Tilburg Science Hub for a while. So this is his site. He's a data scientist. He now works for Bowl.com. That's it. You could just, does he link? Yeah, this is on GitHub, I guess. So you could just like clone a site and put in your own picture and, go with it. So just have that page, because that's somewhat what people expect from people who, want to go into the data analytics world, at least according to my view. Just trust me, your hard work will pay off. And I'm curious to see and hear from you how this went over the years. It's amazing to see you learn and grow. Many of you guys started from scratch, and others thought they could program, but I sincerely hope I could also lift your level of programming a little bit. And I really enjoyed seeing different projects and data sets, like software programs, many suggestions that you guys brought up. So that was pretty cool. And I think you particularly did a good job in defining really good projects. So I don't think it's been that creative last year. And this year I've seen many creative ideas. So it's pretty cool. So it paid off also thinking a little more closely about the research question. Although I kind of pushed you more into this data prep and, direction, I think it was also worthwhile thinking a little bit about what you actually want to do. So thanks a bunch for pushing on that point. So let's look ahead. Use your skills to implement across classes or projects. My teaching material is open access, so you can give it to anybody, even students outside of Tilburg. Just onboard the people that you work with on this new toolkit. Because once others learn it too, you have a more productive working environment. You don't need to go full-fledged all the time. Nothing needs a Docker file or a make file or whatever. Maybe you just create this better looking directory structure without even make, just separate source code and output files. It already helps, right? So don't perceive this as only having to go the extra mile, but you can have very, very mild and small hacks that make people go like, oh, that's smart. So just use this. And there are a couple of examples in class that you could readily use. Realize it takes time to learn. So just because you took the class doesn't mean you can actually do it fast and reliably. Actually, I only learned many of the things that I taught you just because I'm teaching you. I know it existed, I've used it, but I didn't really know how to use it very well. And because I built this course, actually, I became way more proficient. So, even I'm learning all the time. It took me really years to become proficient. Use this for your thesis. There are a couple of example theses already that have implemented these workflows. So, go find them, hunt for them on GitHub and use them, clone them, and just like radically put in your own stuff and your own code. I always start from templates. I barely start from scratch. Build your job market profile with this website. Yeah, I mentioned that before. Pin your best repositories. So what I really try to make on, like, if you go to my thing, I carefully thought, that's not me. I want to go to my personal one. I carefully curate the repositories that I'm pinning, that people show. This is what I want to showcast. So if I go to the repositories you guys have sent me, it still has some temp names there and some other stuff. So, hide them from your public profile, unpin them, make this look nice, because people are going to look for you and then they actually discover you on GitHub. I get job invites, like people don't really fully read this profile. I get like job invites like every other week or so, people who want to hire me just because they went through my code. So it's also a chance for you guys to get some attention. What else you can do during your studies? It's become part of the open science community at Tilburg. Not for the sake of open science, but just for the sake of having fun and giving something back to the community or using some of this stuff. So I try to promote Tilburg Science Hub as the place where this happens. So, you know, maybe get on board it. Go to our GitHub page and, you know, pick an issue that you think you want to be working on. If you want a job and actually get paid for some of these things, talk to me. If you've got some unique skills, some ideas, you know, if you tell me you have these 10 issues that you want to work on and it's going to take you 2 months to do so, you know, maybe I can hire you for like that period, just because this stuff needs to be done eventually. And I want to push this initiative. So you have the skills to do this. So, you know, why don't you try it? Joining our lab is another option. So you can talk to me. There's a link on the side. You can join the LinkedIn page, and the link is on the side, and the slide deck is on the side too. I can put it in. And by the way, you can also add me on LinkedIn, because it's amazing to see you actually go onto the job market and stay in touch after this study program. So after your studies, what you can do, automate stuff, save time for the things you love. Don't tell anybody so much that you put it on your CV, right? But when you enter a company, don't tell it to anybody. Just first use it for yourself. That was one of the advices I have been getting when I was a student. Be confident and keep on learning all the time. By the time you're 2 years into the business, probably Docker is standard and there's a new technology that you need to learn. Keep on learning. I do it all the time. Otherwise, you'll be outdated in a matter of no time. Seize opportunities as a researcher, entrepreneur, citizen who knows data and tech, and well, shake it up, mix it with your unique skill set. Okay, here's this example, right? I love music and I love computers. And I mixed my computer skills with music and my knowledge about the industry to become a researcher that analyzes stuff in the music industry, right? You can do the same thing. I don't know what you guys are interested in, but there will always probably be also a tech component to it, that you marry these two skills and you have something that you really enjoy doing. You know, sometimes it's like you need to be courageous enough to go that mile, right? And not hide your unique skills, because this is what you are, right? But mix it up and then you can unfold your potential. So what are the next steps in this class? The deadline for the project is coming up, I think, Sunday at 5 or something like this. Let me check it out. Oops, dPrep, course, team project, and then the deadline is, yes, 27th of March, 5 p.m. And the only thing that you actually need to do is to submit your GitHub repository link on Canvas. That's it. So, and if you haven't read this, this is important, because people ask me, what do I need to do for my report? And it says literally here, there's no report. So just submit a self-documenting repository. That's it. That's the whole point of what we did here in this class. And yeah, here are a couple of tips, what you could still do. These are some links for exam preparation, but I'll first finish my deck and then we'll go through these exam things, okay? So what are other things that you could do to wrapping up this course? You can evaluate it. I give you the link in the chat. So this is, I think, where you can evaluate this course. Course evaluations are really integral to our work. And even though it doesn't directly benefit you, it benefits the cohort that follows you. On the basis of course feedback, I have made so many changes to this course. I have completely revised the workload, and trust me, it is way more lightweight than it used to be. So I think it now fits. If it doesn't, let me know. Course evaluations are extremely important because scores are being considered when I go up for promotion even. So people actually consider this. So please do me the favor and fill in the course evaluation, no matter whether you hate it or you like the course. I just want your opinion because it helps me make the course stronger. All right, so your exam is coming up. So it's good that you kind of, start preparing, and I'll quickly go through this exam page again. Then take a look at some of the example questions. I'll show you a preview of how the exam looks like on Test Vision itself. I just opened, the first 1 or 2 pages of the old exam of both parts. And then I hope you're good to go. All right, so here we go. It's a open book exam. It takes place wherever you have your laptop on the 5th of April, between 9 and 12, like noon. So like it closes at noon, which is like 11:59 plus 1 minute. So not at midnight, 3 hours. You need to register internally. There's a link to a form. If you haven't done so, please fill it in. I use this form to kind of enter your email addresses to the system. I can import it very easily so that you have all access. There's going to be an inspection, and probably like 3-4 weeks after the exam has been done. You also need to register for the resit, but that can be done up to a week before the exam. You get the exam on Test Vision. There is a link here to Test Vision. You just click on it, and then you choose login via Surf Connect, and then you can see the exams. I'm not a student, so I can't like show you how it looks like, but there are probably guides on the Tilburg website that show you how this works. If you don't see the exam on the day of the exam, you can be in touch on WhatsApp with me on that day, just like during the exam too, if there are like issues, and I'll help you. There's not an official support desk by Tilburg. They don't know what's going on. I'm the one who runs the support desk during the exam. The exam consists of 2 parts. Reason is, first part is an hour. It shows you randomized questions. Even if you're trying to work together, you won't be able to, because you all get different questions, right? And in this exam, you can go back between questions. So if you've solved one question, click on next, you will never be able to go back. Part 2 is open. You can start on it at 9 itself, but I advise you to first, finish that time pressure part, number 1. You can work on your computer, and everything that you submit will be via Test Vision. I do not accept email attachments via email, so make sure that you're attaching the correct things, such as when I ask you for a PDF file, do a PDF file. Sometimes students attach data files for a question where I ask for an R markdown, right? So like a couple of students always like lose points on that, so make sure that doesn't happen. I'm open on WhatsApp to support you for any any issues, like, hey, I can't see the exam. Oh, I forgot to put your name on the list. Okay, I'll do it right away, right? So I'll be available, but I will not give any support for installing R, make, installing packages, running Python code in an automated workflow. This is all something that you should have been Python, I think, even so. Anything that we did in this class, I expect you to have a workable system right there. It's an open book exam. You can Google whatever you want, but communication with anybody about the content of the exam is strictly prohibited, right? I have had a couple of instances where I actually spot people collaborating. So just don't fall for the trap. Just because you're on your own computer doesn't mean what you do is not tractable. It's not that tracking, but it's like sometimes people just copy paste stuff and it looks like so similar. And we can have a discussion about it. So don't do it. First part is theory, like knowledge, comprehension, and analysis questions. If you don't know what that means, I think it should be somewhere on my page about Bloom's taxonomy. Is that here? Bloom, it's not, but it's like different thinking levels that I'm testing. So I actually do show you what it means. So let me see, Bloom, I think it's Bloom. So this is what I always use to create questions. Let me see, is knowledge questions are more like, can you list 3 reasons why GitHub is a versioning system or something like that? This is a stupid question, but like or a comprehension question. What is the main idea of versioning? I can ask the same question, but ask it in different ways. if I ask you what's the main idea of versioning, you will actually have to do some own thinking here. If I just tell you what are the 3 things Git can do, then you're just going to put it in Google. Don't copy paste because that's plagiarism. And then you rephrase what you find. That's a knowledge question. Comprehension, you actually need to explain, right? To show an understanding of finding information from text. And I don't care where that text is written. And application questions like use in a new situation. Like, hey, this is a make file. It doesn't run. Please let me know how to fix it. And that's just theory, right? About relative directories and absolute directories, for example. This is an analysis question. So yeah, this is something that I advise you to take a look at. Then that's the first part. And then the second part has fewer questions, much fewer questions, but way more time allocated to it. And expect like about, 2 to 3 questions, such as the ones listed here. Like, I'll give you a GitHub repository and a link to an issue, and you have to work on it in your forked version of that same repository, and then submit your work as a pull request. Easy to do. I'm testing multiple things here. Maybe I'll ask you to do an R Markdown, and I test whether you can actually work on open source repositories. Okay, let me zoom in. Makes it easy to read. Then automate an existing workflow. I'll give you a couple of code files and say like, automate it, put it together. What you got to do there is like spot what are different logical parts there. Usually I indicate those, and then define each of those code files with proper input, transformation, output building blocks, like, little blocks that loads and stuff, and then gradually automate it with a makefile. Or that's kind of the 2-3 things right here. And I test more of the higher level thinking skills, which means it's like, questions like on the right side. And I can't make it up, but there are some example questions on the page. So how does it all look? Let's take a look at the exam, right? So this is test vision, how I see it. And I can click on preview. And this is how, okay, just gotta log in again. So let's take part 1. Click on preview, just a sec. So that's how the exam looked like last year. So how this works is you start test vision, you click on the exam, and then you get like an overview page about the exam. And I can already tell you probably I'm not going to change the overview page a lot, right? So take a screenshot right now, and then you don't have to read it during the exam. Well, maybe, quickly browse whether I made any changes, but like you're losing time if you don't know what you're prepped for, right? What this essentially does, it lays down the rules of the examination. It's something that you can like kind of sue me on later, right? So I try to be very clear. You can't like cooperate with anybody during or outside the blah, it's like rules like this. And then if you're ready, you can click on, oh, by the way, my WhatsApp number is here. So make sure that you can be in touch with me on that day. And ooh, shit, that's a question I didn't expect to kind of give away, but here we are, right? So this is, for example, one of the questions on the exam, right? Please view the code snippet below and then indicate which of the following data operations are carried out in this snippet. If none of the operations below are carried out, you can respond to this question without adding any check marks, right? So let's try it. What's happening here? Let's try to answer this one. Oh yeah, deduplication and filtering subsetting. Yeah, you already put it in the chat. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, that's it. But it can get more complex, right? So think about anything of those things that I put up on the screen. Like, like, can you actually recognize aggregation? The command is not aggregation. So what is the command, right? And then by which grouping variable is anything like this happening? Are we using regular expressions? You can spot these kind of things, right? So this is a very good example question. You can always click on like Volgende to see the next question. I'm not going to show you the next question. But that's kind of how you see like how many questions you have on the exam. So you get like 14 to go. And you see how much time you're spending on it. And if you want to go back to the screen, always click on introduction, and then you can click on next again. The moment you click on volgende, you go to the next question. The moment you click on klaar or ready or something like this, you stop the exam and hand it in. Let me show you. Weet u zeker dat u de toets wilt beëindigen? And there's an English version. Are you sure you want to quit the exam? Because you're going to be done. And there's always 2 or 3 students every year that don't click on volgende next. They click on results that are ready. And they hand in their exam and that's it. And then you can't go back, right? So don't do it unless you're really done. Weet u zeker dat u de toets wilt beëindigen? Nee, dat weet ik niet zeker. Okay, like this. I'm not sure I really want to quit the exam. Good. So that's this part. And the other part is gonna look kind of the same, right? You will have to enter it as a separate exam. And it starts again with a page which looks exactly the same. It just says it's part 2, and then you click on start and you're good to go. And I'm not going to click on start right now. So that's a bit how it feels. Any questions about it? Michael, I hope this was what you expected, because Michael contacted me and asked like for preview of the exam. So I hope this was useful for you, or you watch it back on the recording. I hope. Good. So any questions about the exam? I can also, let me leave on the recording for now, because, maybe you ask questions that are useful for those that are not here. Any questions? Luc?
You said it already, but I think I missed it. Could you go back and forth within questions?
Not in part 1, but yes in part 2.
Clear. Thank you.
Good. Michael?
So for instance, for the part 2 questions, we can see that sometimes we have to do more than one thing. Like we have to group by and then maybe get like 3 variables out of that group by and summarization. What if I'm able to get only 2 of those results without the final one? Does that mean that I get no points, or I get points for as much as I've worked?
It depends on the question. So I can I need to stop because I go into my question database. But usually I have for each question I have a grading sheet, and let me show you the grading sheet for one of my questions. Let me see. Let me show you the grading sheet for this one. Just a sec. Not enough for those ones. Give me a sec. And I'm not sure I actually want to share my screen, but let me see layer stuff. Where is this? Well, maybe to make a long story short, for open questions, there's always a grading guideline where I pre-decide how to allocate points. So, okay, I'll show you another question. Okay, there we go. What can regular expressions be used for? Provide a brief answer in less than 25 words, right? And then my answer key, which you don't see, but now you see it, is clean text or find text and recode. That's somewhat what I specified. Like, I don't know, 20-30% are answering something else that really makes sense. I also give points, but this is kind of what I expect, right? So when I read this question, that's how I'm going to grade it. Okay. Okay, good. Do you have another question? Okay, then I think that's that. I think then the only thing that remains is actually to take your remaining questions for the assignments, right? For the projects. Good, so I'll stop recording right now. So thanks a bunch.